Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Yes, yes, yes. Good morning. I really appreciate you coming here today and joining us as we talk about the second episode in the Chosen series. Glad to be with you live this time. We were away, and I certainly, sorry, didn't meet with you, but I hear it was a wonderful discussion afterwards, and I would certainly hope we have the same thing today. If you'll recall, last week's episode introduced the personalities of many of the characters, and the theme of the series was basically set with that encounter with Mary, when Mary was called, Mary was chosen. And today, we're going to focus on a little different type of encounter. We're going to show a clip from the Shabbat that's being celebrated in the various households of Mary, Nicodemus, Matthew, and Simon. And you're going to see how the mindsets of these different characters affects the tone of the Shabbat dinner that they had. But before we do that, what I'd like to do is look at some significant things that take place in this episode. Obviously, Jesus' healing of Mary was the highlight of episode 1, but we see here that Nicodemus was given credit for that healing. If you recall, when the other people in the other Pharisees, they wanted to go ahead and give the news to everybody that Nicodemus healed Mary. And of course, Nicodemus was thinking something's not right here. Although he thought too, a little bit, I would feel anyway, that he thought that perhaps maybe he did heal her, but he didn't know how. He didn't know why. So he said, let's hold off a little bit here. But then he runs into Mary, of course, and we see what happened. He learns that it wasn't him that healed her, but rather another person whose name she didn't even know. So he begins to question some of the validity of some of his teachings. He's thinking, something's not right. Someone has arrived in our midst here, and I feel that they're going to turn things upside down. And he becomes so preoccupied with it that even his wife tells him, hey, Nick, get over it. Get your head together. You got to do the Shabbat tonight, and there's going to be a lot of other leaders here, and they're going to be counting on you to lead them. So, get into this here. So, as he was about to, preside at the Shabbat, we could see this mindset. He's out there somewhere. He's not 100% with it. Continuing with the mindsets as they prepare for Shabbat, we look at Simon. Simon's going to spy on some of the Jewish merchants who fish on Shabbat. And he's going to report them to, I think it was to Quintus that he was going to report them to. He made that deal, if you remember, with his brother. Well, he made a deal unbeknownst to his brother Andrew that he was going to do this and get that debt erased. Mary, of course, her mindset, what do you think her mindset would be going into Shabbat? Here she's been healed, okay? She's happy. She's become a leader of the Rat Pack. Remember Frank Sinatra? I don't know if you guys are old enough. Dean Martin, Joey Bishop, Peter Lawford, they were, thick as thieves together. And Mary's been accepted as one of the group. And finally, Matthew. The contempt for Matthew continues to grow as we hear his father telling one of the Roman soldiers that he has no son. So with what I just described to you, watch this clip and see how these mindsets of these main characters affect how they relate to each other and affect how the Shabbat gathering flows.
Hello, Mary. Hello.
It's good to see you.
Yes. Yes.
I don't want to be rude, but would it be okay if I...
Oh, yes, of course. Please come in. I just never thought you'd, I have guests here. This is my first time. I don't know what I'm doing.
Rabbi.
You already know these men?
They are students of mine. I trust they have been polite.
Of course.
Your guests can take the seat. Yes, Mary?
Oh, of course. Yes, of course. Please have a seat. I keep saying of course a lot. Francis is the man I told you about who helped me.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Mary told us so much about you.
Oh, I hope not too much.
I'm Barnaby. This is Shula. She is blind.
In case you couldn't tell.
I'm so sorry. I don't actually know your name.
I'm Jesus of Nazareth.
Well, apparently something good can come from Nazareth. What?
Mary, I'm honored to be here. Why don't you begin?
Oh no, I couldn't now that you're here. You must.
Thank you, but this is your home, and I would love for you to do it.
Okay. I'll just read from this now. Now the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. And God completed on the seventh day his work that he did.
And
God abstained on the seventh day from all the work he did. And God blessed the seventh day, and he hallowed it, for thereon he abstained from all the work that God created to do.
Blessed are you,
Lord our God,
who creates
ruler of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine.
You have lovingly and willingly given us
You have lovingly and willingly given us your Shabbat as an inheritance in memory of creation. Because this is the first day of our holy assemblies in memory of the Exodus from Egypt. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth the bread from the earth. Amen.
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 Going back to the beginning of this episode, we see, almost 1,000 years ago of the Sabbath being celebrated. It says 948 BC is what it was. And obviously, one of the reasons that I feel that the writers went back to this was to show that this is not just a new tradition, that this has been going on and on and on for the whole of the Jewish community, since the beginning of the Jewish community. And you could hear this one little boy questions his grandmother about the meaning of Shabbat, or the Sabbath at that time. And she tells him Shabbat is a time for rest, and it's a time to honor those things that are very important to us, such as family, the people of Israel, and of course God. And the scene ends with the adults blessing each other and the children and saying the traditional greeting, Shabbat Shalom. So now as the film fast forwards to the present, the 30 AD, what have you, we hear the characters using pretty much the exact same words that the greeting that they used 1,000 years ago. Shabbat Shalom, have a peaceful Sabbath. But as you saw in this little clip, all those Sabbath dinners, those Shabbat dinners, were not all that pleasant. They didn't all project peace and rest. I would say that perhaps Mary's gathering of her Shabbat was best identified with that opening scene of rest and peace. Mary was a little tense, of course, because this is the first time she's ever hosted Shabbat, and she was worried about making mistakes, which is only natural. I'm glad we put that in there. Humanizes the characters in the story. And as it turned out, you could see she confused Shabbat with the Passover meal, because she left a chair for Elijah. Anybody ever been to a Seder? You have the Elijah's cup type of thing, waiting for Elijah to come, who was thought to be maybe a forerunner or maybe a future candidate as a Messiah. Well, lo and behold, how prophetic that was. This mistake was a good mistake, because who took over the spot? But the old story, guess who's coming to dinner? It was Jesus. Shabbat celebration at Simon's house was anything but peaceful. As you could see, the tension, instead of the happiness that you saw in Mary's household and people just greeting each other, you see that look on Eden's face, Simon's wife. Boy, she was ready to kill when he gave her that kiss on the cheek. And I could just read her mind. You're kissing me for, you slime ball. You're not going to stay for this. You're going to go fishing on Shabbat, during the Sabbath. So, and he wants her to trust him. But she tells him, it wasn't in this clip, but she tells him she doesn't have the strength for this, and this is not going to happen again. So the tension was unbelievable there. Now, Shabbat for Matthew, that was very profound. Here, his Shabbat is not in a house, not with friends, but eating dinner while sitting on the ground. Now, Matthew is fastidious when it comes to, cleanliness. Remember when he stepped in the dog remnants there and he threw away his sandals? So here he is on the ground having his Shabbat dinner. So looking at how the different households approach Shabbat that evening, it kind of reminds me of a story. Before that, I want to go about Nicodemus. Nicodemus's mind was kind of out there a little bit, thinking about what was going on. And although you didn't see tension in Nicodemus's, in the household where Nicodemus was, it was all business. There wasn't a lot of warmth there. It was all business. But all these different Shabbats kind of reminds me of a story that talks about our inner instincts, what we desire in life, what we find important to us in life. And the story is kind of like this. It's this man absolutely, by the way, how many people have cats? That's it? Okay, good. A man absolutely hated his wife's cat. And he decided to get rid of him one day by driving 20 blocks from the house and leaving him at a park. As he was getting home, there was a cat walking up the driveway. Well, the next day he decided to drive 40 miles away, and he put this little beast way down into the woods. Driving up home, there's a cat walking up the driveway. He kept taking the cat further and further out, and the cat would always beat him home. At last, he decided to drive several miles out. He turned left, he turned right, he went past a bridge, under a bridge, over a mountain. And finally, when he reached a destination that he thought was safe enough from his home, he left the cat there. A few hours later, the man calls the house and asks his wife, "Is that cat in our driveway?" And the wife says, "Yes, why?" Frustrated, he says, "Put the cat on the phone. I'm lost and I need directions." Before you start writing letters to the bishop about cruelty to animals, I want you to know we have 2 cats of our own, so whom we love dearly. So what was it with this cat that he kept finding his way back home? I suppose scientists can explain it away by teaching us about the magnetic pull of the earth and the position of the sun and so forth. But I would like to believe that that animal found its way home through pure instinct. The cat knew where it was loved, the cat knew where it was cared for, and he was drawn in that direction. In this week's episode, we find that some of our characters, to one degree or another, are lost, and they're trying to find their way back to some sense of normalcy. As I said, look at poor Nicodemus. He is completely lost. He does not know what to make of this conversation with Mary about her conversion. Here is a high-ranking member of the religious Jewish community, and he's questioning if his teachings are valid. Is something going on here that I need to know about, that we need to discuss? In Simon's household, there's tension, certainly because Simon is lost. He's a Jew, and not only is he going to break the Sabbath by going out, allegedly fishing, but he's planning to turn in fellow Jews, even though he claims they're Jewish merchants, fellow Jews to the Romans to have this large debt forgiven. We have Mary. Now, Mary is not at all lost anymore because she has been healed. But it was her instincts that drew her to follow Jesus. Jesus healed her. Yes, she could have walked away at that point. She was chosen, but she was not going to leave and become lost once again. Something drew her to Jesus. And when you think about how terrible her life was prior to meeting Jesus, probably wouldn't have blamed her if things are okay, and then she just finally slipped back into her old ways. And finally, Matthew. For me, the most emotional moment in this whole episode is the one where Matthew is peeking in at his family, obviously longing to join them, but knowing that he would be rejected. When I was in dental school, I became good friends with a classmate who was Jewish. We kept in touch after graduation. I remember calling him one day to say, him calling me one day to say that he had kind of good news and bad news. And the good news was that he was getting married and we were being invited to the wedding. The bad news, his fiancée was not Jewish, and his family disowned him. Literally disowned him. He even used the term or the phrase, "I am dead to my family." He had a brother that fortunately, didn't follow the old customs, but both his parents died without ever reconciling with him. I can't imagine, as I was reading about, watching Matthew being dead to his family, how Ed must have felt losing, with his family dying, knowing that he was a nothing to them. So for Jewish families, especially in that area, family meant everything. You could see that the families when they got together for Shabbat. So you can imagine the hurt that Matthew experienced, knowing that his family didn't even acknowledge his existence. Another part of that is the way he turns quickly and walks away with that bowl of food. Matthew kind of walked with his head down throughout the whole series so far. And part of it was because I guess maybe he didn't want to be recognized. But I think the other part was he had to have a lot of shame within himself. I mean, he knew what he was doing, against everything in his Jewish heritage, in his Jewish tradition. And it had to be painful for him. Why? Why did he become a tax collector? My thought is, if you look at Matthew and the way he was presented, he was a little different than everybody else. Wouldn't you agree? Maybe a little on the autistic side. It was not accepted socially. So, my thought is that he turned to become a tax collector because, well, at least I'm going to do something good with what I have and, get some wealth out of this if no one else will accept me. But that scene where he walks away with his head down, really, it just broke my heart. And he sits on the ground eating dinner with who? What? A stray dog. So, I guess that Shabbat was a special time for families. For Matthew to be rejected like this every week at Shabbat had to be horrible. We know that Matthew made bad choices in life. And he hurt a lot of people with that, like I said, the money-grubbing ways. But you still had to feel sorry for him. Is there anybody here that really felt, he got his coming, good for him? Anybody here feel sorry for him? Oh, I guess I'm the only one that felt sorry for him. So anyway, but Matthew's the loneliest character because he was looked down by everybody, even the Romans. But you contrast that with Mary, who now that she's free of these demons is free to celebrate Shabbat again. And not only that, but she also has friends to invite and even gets 3 unexpected guests, Jesus and his 2 disciples. But what did she do when Jesus came to the door? He just stood at the door. He just stood there. She had to invite him in. Is that what happens with us? If Jesus comes to us, we do have to invite him in, don't we? But that warmth and happiness flowing out of Mary's home just made Matthew's lonely meal that much more pitiful. So, I think there are times in our life when we can relate to Matthew's story. Unlike that cat that was dropped off miles away and found his way back because of instinct, and in spite of, all the things that people do to us, we still are welcome back home. Like the characters in our story, we all get lost. And sometimes we feel that there's no way back. With all that's happened, and that's happening in this world, think about it. We feel, most people, or a lot of people, feel lonelier than ever. We've had COVID, we have inflation, we have natural disasters, just to name a few things that have left people isolated and frightened. Yet there's always a way back. And that way back, as we're starting to see in this series, is through Christ. To paraphrase John 14:6, 1-6, do not let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God, have faith in me also. For where I am going, you know the way. And of course, we know Thomas, teacher, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? And Jesus uses those powerful, most beautiful words. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Like the cat who was lost, and by instinct found its way back home, we must do the same, and we'll never feel alone again. So as we break into small groups, there's 2 questions I'd like for you to think about. The first question is, what are some of the character flaws that Matthew exhibits that I might find in myself? And the second, in comparing this montage of the Shabbat, have you ever, during a gathering with family, experienced one or more of these emotions that were expressed by the families in the film? And if so, what were those feelings? What were those emotions? And what brought those emotions to the surface? In other words, think back to when you got together with family. Was there one of the family members there that you really didn't particularly care for? How did that affect you, how you acted, during that dinner? Things of that nature. Okay?
Great. Thank you so much, Deacon Tony. We appreciate your wisdom as always. So from here, we'll invite you to break up into your groups. Small group leaders should all have the small sheet on the front of your roster are the discussion questions for today, paraphrased from Deacon Tony. And in the back are the optional take-home discussion questions for people to take home at the end of your session. You'll have about 20 to 25 minutes in your small groups. We'll turn the lights on. Somebody find me or Lisa Priestap if you need to know what group that you're in. All right? Have good discussion. May God